So we are nearing the end of the favorite book project. And now we are going to talk about Treasure Island by Robert Lewis Stevenson. It's a pretty famous book, and I remember it that, I read it back when I was a kid. I remember it being this like epic adventure novel, and so I was very excited to get into it. It is the story of Jim Hawkins, who his mom runs an inn, and this dude called Black Dog comes, and he's obviously an old pirate. He comes to stay at the inn, and he's really mean. And eventually he dies, and they go through his stuff and find a treasure map. And they're like, ooh, we found a treasure map. And of course, they have to go talk to the rich people about the treasure map. The two rich people in the town are the doctor and squire. And they're like, the doctor, these rich people, they'll know what to do with the treasure map. And so they go talk to him about it. And the two rich people are like, yes, we got to go find this treasure now. And so they hire a crew of motley, very suspicious seeming seamen to take them to this unknown location. And one of those people is Long John Silver, who I would say is probably the most famous part of this book. Very, very deservingly so. He is a great character who is just this very charming and very manipulative dude who you kind of find it hard to hate. But on the other hand, he is also kind of terrible, so you're like, I don't know. So anyway, they go to the island, and I remember there being. Well, let me talk about what I remember. So I remember it being like a short amount of time to kind of get to the island, but I remember there also being a lot more build up to the mutiny because there's a mutiny. It's not even really a spoiler because it happened so early in the book and I didn't realize that. And so it was kind of disappointing because I remember it being such a surprise. I remember being like, wow, these people that I've gotten to know and love, Long John Silver of all people, like, he's the bad guy? Oh no! Like, that's what I remember. Maybe it's because I was so young, so I felt like, 50 to 80 pages was a really long build up, but it wasn't. And it was kind of obvious. I don't know, maybe it's also because I knew it was coming, but it seemed really obvious that they were making plans. Like, it wasn't a kind of, ooh, are they making plans? It was kind of like, oh, they're definitely planning a mutiny. And so when Jim is sitting in the apple barrel, and they're nearing the island, and he overhears the conversation where they're talking about mutinying, it doesn't have that punch that I remember, and that was kind of the beginning of the end for me, as far as feeling like this is a great and interesting book. But I don't know, that build up is so important to me. And then basically they get to the island and they're there, and it's the mutinying pirates who are all terrible people and all, drunkards, and they're just not a very cohesive or good group versus the, wit and the very English astute people, the captain and the squire, all of them and their servants. It's the pirates versus them, and it's kind of like, I don't know. Of course, you're supposed to pull for the very rich people, and of course you do, because I mean the pirates are terrible. But on the other hand, it's like, I don't know, the rich people. Maybe it's just me being classist or something. But they're so snooty that it makes me kind of not like them very much. And maybe that's also a thing that's actually on purpose, because Jim Hawkins, the person who is telling this story, the kid, is not especially rich himself, and so maybe he also feels kind of like, these rich people, they're so snooty. But I don't know, it should be more cool than it is, I guess. And also, the pirates don't really seem like that great of antagonists because they're so bad. and they're so like, ooh, we're gonna go party it up on the beach, yeah, and they're like just, they have no cohesion, which makes them, you're just like, they're not gonna win. They may have more of, there's more of them than there are of the rich, snooty people. Snooty people, they find a place to, like, a fortress where they can, like, hold up, and they got guns, and they're all, they got the captain who's like whipping them into shape and being like, y'all gotta stay on watch, and you go there and you go there, and we're gonna watch from all sides, and like they're so organized that you're like, there's no way that the pirates are going to be able to make this happen. And then there's also the treasure plot, which I would say is actually the only thing that kind of keeps you reading. That and Ben Gunn. Ben Gunn is the person who is on the island, and he was marooned there. And I really like his character. I find him very interesting, and that's one of the reasons I reviewed a long time ago a book that was written about him by another author. And I think that book is better. Like, that book did more with the whole pirate theme than this one. It's interesting though, because I don't know, I think of Treasure Island as being very, like, all about pirates. However, the pirates are so obviously the bad guys. It's very anti-pirate. Today we have things like Pirates of the Caribbean, all that kind of stuff. And you think of that as being the norm, but really, in this book and in the Ben Gunn book, it's very much anti-pirate, like, I don't know who needed an anti-pirate propaganda book, but that's pretty much what Robert Lewis Stevenson wrote. Like, it's very interesting in that way. It's like, what brought this on to create this anti-pirate book? But anyway, it's not a bad book. I don't want to completely bash it. There are things that are still interesting. Like I said, the character of Long John Silver is by far the most interesting part of the book. There are a few kind of skirmishes that'll keep your attention. It's just, I guess I had built it up in my mind as being very suspenseful, very like, ooh, who's gonna win? Who's gonna get the treasure? And really, it's not that so much as just, here's this adventure that happens, and it's not written in a way that is supposed to evoke suspense or really very much, I don't know, interest. It's just kind of, this is the scale of what happened on this island. Some people die. It's like, oh, that person died, and it's just not as overwhelming as I remember it being as far as the adventure thing goes. So yeah, that is Treasure Island. Again, good, but not great. We'll leave it there. The next book that I am reviewing is actually another sea novel. It is The True Confessions of Charlotte Doyle, and so I'm looking forward to getting back into ship mode next time. See you then!